Hey guys, welcome back to Your Healthcare in Your Hands. I'm here today with Kristen Harootunian, and we are going to be talking about her role in Minding Your Mind. And she's actually a full-time student at Penn State Brandywine. What are you studying?
I'm studying corporate communications.
Very nice.
Yeah.
And she's also a speaker for Minding Your Mind, so let's welcome her. So Kristen, I know that you are in recovery, and I was hoping maybe you could share your story with us.
Sure. So basically, from a very young age, I found myself wondering what was wrong with me, basically. I wondered why I never fit in with anybody, why in school I would try so hard and it would never be enough. I grew up upper middle class, Glen Mills. I had both of my parents, 2 older brothers, 2 dogs, and I had everything that I needed and everything that I wanted. When I found myself in a place of feeling like I needed to dress up the outside was when I wasn't feeling good on the inside. I would go to school, I would do well in school, I would get the A on the paper, and truly, like, when I came home, what I didn't want everybody to see was that when I walked into those doors, the facade completely fell. I grew up in an alcoholic household. My father was a workaholic. My brothers were in sports teams, so they were never around, and my mother was like a full-blown alcoholic and an anorexic. So coming home to that at a very young age, I found myself playing a mother role that wasn't mine to play. I took care of her, I fed her, I bathed her, I looked over her, and knowing now, but not knowing back in the day, that wasn't my responsibility, and also you can't stop the disease of addiction if it's untreated. I tried to save her, and on December 6th of 2009 was when she attempted and completed her suicide. So that was like a huge turning point for me. I did know that addiction was hereditary. I knew that, if I saw what she went through, for some reason I just thought that I would learn from her mistakes, that I would never be that person, and I strived for this perfection that didn't even exist. And my dad demoted himself from his position at work. My brothers came home, and I was home the entire time. Moving forward, addiction was a lot deeper in me than I had once thought. I found myself acting out in many, many addictive behaviors through self-harm, through eating disorder, and at 13 years old, I picked up a drink and I knew it was over. I knew that I had the disease of addiction because of the way that I loved it so much, and I only wanted to feel that way 100% of the time because it made me feel so good. I always told myself that I wasn't an addict because of the way that I grew up. I had all the money, I had all the things, I had all the clothes, I had the good grades, I played on the lacrosse team, I was a horseback rider, I had a ton of friends. But very quickly, they do say that, it's progressive, this disease, if it's untreated. And I went from 13 to 17 years old, so 4 years. I did things that I never thought I would do. The drinking, instead of being on the weekends, it was every day. I picked up drugs that I never thought that I would pick up, and I had been to one treatment center at 15, but they focused on the surface level stuff. So if you take away the drugs, you'll be fine. And 22 days, you're done, and immediately I picked right back up. Very, very quickly, it progressed for me, and from having a 4.0 in school, I dropped all the way down to a 1.7. I was at my junior year, wondering if I was going to even graduate, let alone make it past 18 years old, living on this earth. And when my father had noticed this and tried many times to quote-unquote save me, I wondered how I was going to save myself. And of course, now I know today, we don't have to save ourselves, we can ask for help. And his hand was out for me the entire time, and I just couldn't see it because of the denial. I couldn't see that he was trying to help me. And I was in a therapy session, and I'd been to many therapists at this point, and she told me that I had failed. you know, and I was like, I failed. Like, that's, I couldn't believe it. I'm like wondering to this woman, like, I failed? And she's like, no, like, you didn't fail at life. Like, you failed at using drugs and alcohol successfully. Like, you failed at the self-harm. You failed at the eating disorder. You failed at stuffing your feelings because none of that stuff works.
Right.
You know, there's, like, a deeper issue that you're trying to run away from, and, like, that issue is you. And I couldn't believe it, you know, like, she was the first person to, like, set me straight. And I was 17, and I looked at her, and I looked at my dad, and, like, I decided that I needed to go to treatment. You know, I went to Care and Treatment Center, and then I went to this place called Timberline Knolls in Illinois, and they were all dual diagnosis, working with mental health, mental illness, as well as addiction, because I have that, man.
Yeah.
And I knew that things had to change, that there was so much more than just the drink and the drug, that there's this whole underbelly that nobody really likes to pay attention to.
Mm-hmm.
I was taught that I do have control over my thoughts,
Mm-hmm.
and that I do have control over how I act, and that if I'm scared of what I'm thinking, that I should share it with somebody, and all of these things that were so foreign to me. I mean, it wasn't until about 6 months that I had lost the desire to use. And 6 months, like, that's a long time.
Yeah.
But I knew that I needed to change, like, the people, places, and things. You know, if I went back to my old high school, I'd be sitting next to my drug dealer.
Mm-hmm.
And that wasn't applicable.
Yeah.
So we decided that, me and my father decided that I would go to the Bridgeway School, which was the only recovery high school in Pennsylvania. It still is.
Yeah.
And I went to school with 6 kids as opposed to, like, 1,000. We all were trying to get clean together. I had 6 months, and I felt on top of the world, but I still knew that there was, like, some more work to be done. I was still struggling with depression. I was still struggling with, like, the hamster on the wheel thoughts, and I was just like, how do I relieve myself of this? And of course, like, there were outside programs, but I just needed a little bit more. I started going to therapy again. I'm still in therapy today. I have appointments tomorrow, you know, like, I go weekly. I've participated and still participate in yoga. I go to this studio, Verge, in Wayne, and it's a great studio. And I started working out and doing weight training and cardio training, and really finding myself, like, trying to connect my mind, body, and spirit all in one. Because you get the body back, but the spirit and the mind are completely gone.
Mm-hmm.
And just because, like I did in the beginning, like, dressing up the outside, like, it doesn't work. I mean, maybe a couple of months it will, but your spirit and your mind will take you back.
Mm-hmm.
Because overall, I mean, the body is just the body.
Mm-hmm.
But I had spent a year and a half, 2 years at that recovery high school, and I remember, like, vividly, it's like this time of year, you know, and I remember 17 turning 18, and my birthday's on Christmas, and I remember 12:01, my father had texted me, and he was like, you made it, you know, like, 18 years old, you made it, and I couldn't believe it, because, like, that negative mindset, like, I'm never going to be able to make it past 18, I don't have a life to live, like, I'm not supposed to do this, and, you know, I graduated high school, and for a while, I promoted that high school, because there isn't that much awareness, like, what is a recovery high school,
Right.
what does it do, and a recovery high school is basically just that, like, all kids with the same mission on how do I get clean, how do I talk about my feelings, how do I get in service, like, volunteer work,
Mm-hmm.
and how do I get outside of myself in a healthy way, which actually connects myself to the outside world.
Yeah.
And, you know, I did a lot of advocacy for the Bridgeway School, and I ended up sitting on a panel with this guy, Carl, and, you know, I was in Philadelphia, we were talking about medical marijuana, you know, and I'm like, if you're an addict, you know, it might be a different story, but, you know, because I can't use anything.
Yeah.
But I ended up sitting on a panel with this guy named Carl, and he is an executive director with Minding Your Mind. And Minding Your Mind is a nonprofit organization that is geared towards reducing the stigma associated around mental health and mental illness. And that was like the beginning of something that I never thought would ever happen. Carl pulled me aside right after the panel discussion, and he was like, look, I'd really like to meet with you. I'd really like to hear more of your story. I want you to share your story to kids and adults. And it's like, okay, like I don't really know what this means. Like I had so much to share and so much to talk about, but I didn't know how to talk about it. And like that's just it. Like we just talk about it.
Yeah.
You know, Minding Your Mind offers me the opportunity to talk to kids as young as 3rd grade all the way up to college and above and share my mental health and addiction story. And not just in the way of like, these are all the bad things that have happened to me, but like how I got better. Yeah. Because like looking at me, a lot of people think like there's no way you're an addict. Like there's no way that you have mental health issues. And that's the point, like it doesn't discriminate.
No.
And help doesn't discriminate either. You know, working with Minding Your Mind, you know, I go up on stages and I talk to kids and I keep it really real with them. And I don't preach to them statistics. I don't tell them, don't use drugs, because that's not the message. Like the message is that anybody can get help, but you have to tell somebody, you know. I didn't want to tell anybody because I was scared that feelings would kill me. Mm-hmm. But they don't kill me unless I act on them. So with Minding Your Mind and sharing my mental health story, I find myself humbled because I remember being the kid in the audience and wondering like this person they won't be able to relate to me at all. And you know, those were programs that just shared about statistics. Yeah. And when I talked about yoga and I talked about being honest about your feelings and I talked about meditation and going to therapy and when we have a therapist, like you might not click with the first one.
Right.
You know, therapy's kind of like dating in a way. Like it's
so many therapists.
It's so many, dude. I've been to like 10. It's like unbelievable. And, you know, the way that it's like dating, it's like would you think of your first crush and be like,
right.
Oh, like we're gonna get married and have children and it's gonna be great? Like, no, like mine was Joey Angelina in like 3rd grade, you know, and we dated for like a week and I would not marry that person, you know. But you know, it takes time. You know, my very first therapist, I sat in her office and I hated her. You know, I hated her. I didn't want to be there. I was 13 or 12 and I hated her because she was telling me all the things that I really didn't want to hear.
Yeah.
But I sat in her office for 6 months and said, it's like, you're really helping me. This is great, you know? Like, I'm really benefiting. And, like, I left the office, like, seething because I just hated this woman. And it would have been okay for me to say, like, look, I don't like you.
Yeah.
And I don't like this. I don't want to be here. Because, like, that's honesty. And we're afraid to hurt somebody's feelings, but it is a therapist's job to get us somebody that we can work with. Yeah. And that it's not too late or too early to get help. You know, I think that there are a lot of people along the way that have guided me in my journey, and part of that is giving back. You know, Minding Your Mind helps me give back because when I'm done speaking, which is between 20 minutes and an hour and a half, I have kids like line up and like just want to hug me or just want to cry in front of me or just want to talk to me and say like me too, and that's the important piece, like to be able to have somebody that has gotten through it or is getting through it and is in the process of recovery and say like, wow, I want to be like you. You know, I never had a role model growing up, and you know, now I look at other women and I'm like, wow, like I want what you have. You know, I'm a full-time student and I work part-time with Minding Your Mind. You know, my father just got married, and you know, it's all these beautiful things that are happening in my life, but if I don't pray, if I don't meditate, if I don't participate in yoga or my exercise, if I don't talk to somebody about how I'm feeling, it all goes down the drain.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I hope that answers your question.
No, absolutely. Can you give me a hug back?
Yeah.
I'm extremely happy that you are here.
Oh, thank you.
That's awesome. That is a powerful story.
Thank you.
But it's true, there's so many people that they go through the same thing and that, you know, they don't always end up in the right places. Mm-hmm. Whether it's, you know, with the Bridgeway School for you, with people going back to whether it's school and they're sitting next to their dealer, going home and it's like their parents or their neighbors. So with the Bridgeway School, I have like so many questions because I've been looking at them online and everything. I think it's awesome. Congrats on the donation, by the way.
Sure.
So how does the program work? Is it do you stay at the school, kind of like an inpatient kind of like boarding school, or is it a daily?
So it's a regular Howard High School.
Okay.
It's now in North Philadelphia, but when I went, it was in Manayunk, so they had just moved to a bigger facility, which is great. We shared a little hallway at the time. But how it works is like you go into school, like this is just like a normal day. You go into school and you do a check-in. So we'll read like a daily meditation book, whatever it might be, and that day, and we'll reflect on it, and each one of us, which there was like 6, like each one of us would share how our night was, what we felt about the reading, and how we're feeling now. And it was kind of like starting off the day with like positive intentions, and when we were all done, we'd say like, is there anything that we need extra today? Like, do I need to sit in the counselor's office during lunch? Do I need like my peers to be a little bit more gentle with me? Do I need them to know that I'm feeling anxiety, or that I'm feeling really good and everything's good?
Yeah.
But like, I know that some kids, they'd say like, my parent was drinking the night before, and my sibling is using and I'm trying to get away from it, and like just like sharing about it is really freeing. So they'll let us, we'll all be in the same loop on the same page, and then we'll go to class. It offers the same types of classes that a high school would. The STEM classes, and once hi honey, once a day we'll have little like check-ins, in the middle of the day as well. And it's like, how's your day going?
Yeah.
And then once a week or once or twice a week we would have like a period blocked off for group. So we'd have like group therapy, and we'd talk with the therapist that's in the building at all times. She's there every day. And we just go through like talking about our feelings. Like we play like board games that were like feelings oriented, because it seems like really corny, but it's like, I had never talked about my feelings before this. Like I always stuff them with everything. So like being able to like see somebody open up, I'm like, oh wow, like I can do that too, and kind of working through that and building relationships with the kids that I went to school with. And then at the end of the day, at like 3 or 3:30, we'd say what we were doing that night, if we were like going to a meeting, or if we were going to be with our parents or what have you, and like what support would we get that night, and how we would make it to school the next day. And it was purely like an hour by hour basis, because that's how we had to live. Because we wanted to use all the time.
Right.
And of course, like there's drug testing, which is helpful. It's accountability reasons. And more importantly, when I saw the other kids get another day, I wanted to as well.
Yeah.
So they had their graduation, it was just like normal. Unfortunately, the girl that I had graduated with ended up overdosing and passing. And it was just me and her, the only ones that graduated that year.
Yeah.
So it was kind of like a stark contrast, like wow, like they say like 1 in 4 will die.
Yeah.
And there were 6 of us, and it's like 1 of us is gonna die.
Yeah.
And I just didn't want it to be me, and I knew that it wasn't gonna be me if I took the suggestions of others. So yeah, I think that's a
No, absolutely. No, but I think that's a really good thing, because you guys, just having like those little meetings and playing the games, I know it sounds like it's corny, but it works, because when we teach kids, we teach them through play, and it's like we're learning something brand new when we're learning how to express our truth and express our feelings, because, I mean, it's not, like, it's everyone. No one in this community that I know of is able to fully express what it is that's on their mind.
Sure, it's uncomfortable.
It is.
Because if I tell you how I'm feeling, and you're like, oh, like, I don't know about, and like I shut down, I'm never going to tell anybody how I feel again, because I feel like you judged me, and, it was like finding a safe space where it's like we can all share with each other, and like how to be like no judgment.
Yeah, the non-violence kind of thing.
Sure.
Whether it's to yourself or to your peers. And that's so powerful because especially in addiction, there's so many people who suffer from mental illnesses, and getting shut down on any level to people who have certain mental illnesses, it is devastating, and they will never open up again. It's like a huge wall has been built over one like brushed off shoulder of like what it is you're saying. So
sure, absolutely.
it really can. I really like that actually, especially that you guys did it in game too.
Right,
because it just creates a positive atmosphere.
Right, it's nothing too heavy. It's not like, so what did you go home to last night? It's like, good, alright, like just relax. You know, it's like a very lighthearted, like we're playing Uno, you know, and it's like, so like what'd you do last night? Oh well, I don't really want to talk about it. Oh, why? You know.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like very gentle and low key and like nothing crazy, and then I leave that room feeling better and more connected with my peers. So it's really, it's the reason why I'm alive, truly, because I knew if I went back to my school, I would have used. I wouldn't have felt good. I wouldn't have felt supported, and you know, having there be like a counselor's office there 24/7. When I was there, I knew that if I needed help, it was right there. 8 hours a day. So, and they provided transportation for me, which was good.
Oh, cool.
You know, it was like 40 minutes away, you know, like I wasn't driving, so yeah, that was extremely helpful.
No, the Bridgeway School sounds awesome, and honestly, I like it because I'm a fan of like long term.
Sure.
So I'm a yoga instructor, and I picked the longest training possible because I wanted to like fully immerse myself into it. It was a whole year long.
Yeah.
And I feel like everything should be like that. When you go to school, you don't just go for 2 weeks out of the school year. You go there for a long time, and then you go for 12 years, or if you go on further. And then the same thing with recovery. Like you want to be able to put yourself in a situation where it's long term, because it is the state of your mind as much as it is just physically getting off the drug. Right.
Well, I mean, I didn't completely tear myself down in one day, and I'm not going to completely build myself up in one day either.
Yeah.
It's like there was this kind of ground zero area where it's like, how do I even start in rebuilding this in 20 days? You know, like being in treatment at 15, like part of it was like, yes, I was not ready. I didn't want it. I didn't want to be there. I was an adolescent. I was forced in. But number two, I mean, like I had like 23 days was exactly what it was. And it was just enough to get the drugs out of my system. And then I started to feel, and then I left. You know, the insurance wouldn't cover it anymore. And it was, I stayed abstinent for 53 days after that. And I used. Because I had no idea how to deal with my feelings. Like that 6-month-long treatment was the best thing that could have ever happened to me. Because, I got off the drugs, but then like feelings started coming up. Memories started coming up. It was like, how do I do this? You know? I mean, especially being like a young woman that like went out there, it was like, a lot of people, not even just women, but a lot of people get taken advantage of in a lot of different ways. And I really didn't want to relive that. So using was a good way for me to like get out of it.
And stop remembering, Another way to stuff those feelings down.
Right. And that's why like long-term treatment, it was like, these feelings are coming up, these memories are coming up, and I need somebody to share it with. And if I'm outside of a treatment facility for that, or outside of a support system for that, it's really easy to go down the street and like get high.
No, support systems are like the key. So far, like what I've noticed, because I've been watching a lot of different videos on like how people are starting to bring awareness and to like the differences for recovery with addiction. And like the biggest things I've seen are going to be your support system, number 1, and then 2 is finding like physical activities. Which I wouldn't have thought of at first, even though like I went right to the gym and like became one of the gym junkies. And that's the thing, is everyone starts saying like you're replacing one addiction for another. So what is your opinion on this, like replacing one addiction with another, whether it's a meeting, whether it's an outside group or a gym?
So I mean, it's just your motivation. You know, like why are you doing it? Are you doing it to stuff your feelings too? Because like if you are, like you gotta like pump the brakes. You know, because like for me it was, I stopped using and I picked up like the sex, right? I stopped using and I picked up the eating disorder. I stopped using, I picked up the cutting. And like these were other things that like, I wasn't getting high, but like I was still just as well like damaging myself. And when it comes to, you know, when it comes to the meetings in the gym, like they can be disguised as like really great things, you know?
Yeah.
It's like, well, you're trying to get better, but it's a moderation thing.
Yeah.
Because for me, if I'm trying to run away from myself and I'm just like, let's say I go to a meeting and I only want to listen to that person, and I want to shut this off, that's not healthy.
Right.
You know, if I go to the gym and like I'm just trying to like pump out what's going on and trying to like just push it away, like that's not right either. I mean, I need to involve my spirit, my mind, my body in the things that I do and try to do it in a healthy way, because any extreme is a bad thing,
Right.
I believe.
Yeah. My mom always, moderation is key.
Right, right.
Place for everything.
And as an addict, you know, it's like moderation, like what's that, you know? But, you know, it's like that's what the support system is for.
Yeah.
You know, the honesty with the support system, because I could just have a support system, but if I'm not honest with them, if I don't tell them what's going on, then why do I even have one? You know,
and right back to the like being able to be honest and speak your truth.
Right, and like the idea of the people that you surround yourself with or the people that you become is a huge one.
Oh yeah.
You know, I surrounded myself with people that didn't have a college degree. They didn't want to get better in here or out here. And they didn't really plan on living that long either. So like I became that person.
Right.
And if I surround myself with people that like are about wellness and they really want to be in the we and they want to talk about their feelings, I'm going to be way more inclined to do that.
Yeah.
You know, so I feel like for that it was, you know, the person that I looked up to like had a college degree. She was in recovery. She was all about talking feelings, and I was like, I need you to be with me in this journey, you know. And now I'm in college, and I talk about my feelings. You know, it's like the same track.
Yeah. No, definitely. Surrounding yourself with people that you want to be, it's the same thing as like having the mentor, which I went through the same thing. I didn't have like a childhood mentor.
Mm-hmm.
So I was really lost in like, where am I going? What do I want to do?
Sure.
What do I want to become?
Mm-hmm.
And like being able to have someone to look up to and like admire and want to be like, embody almost in a way.
Right, yeah.
It sounds strange at first because it's like you don't want to be someone else, but they inspire you to be
Right.
your version.
Well, they can give you a
Okay.
blueprint.
Yeah.
And be like, this is how I did it. You be you.
Yeah.
But like, this is what I did to be able to get here. And if you just kind of try to follow the path, it might be a little different.
Oh yeah.
But it's like, oh wow, like I'm actually on track to like to get a degree.
Right.
You know, with working out, that was a huge one. Like I took it to the way extreme. You know, I'm like, I'm gonna go to the gym like every day, and like I'm gonna like run 8, 10, 12 miles, and like I'm gonna be like this like, you know, great looking human. Like I don't know what it was, and like it was just like this like way extreme of like craziness, and you know, I started to feel sick. You know, I started to be obsessive about it and really not feel good about it. And it was never enough. It was never enough. It was never enough. And it all stems from like there's like an acceptance piece that has to be there. You know, that like perfect isn't an option because it doesn't exist.
Right.
And if I convince myself that it does, like I'm in trouble.
Oh yeah.
Because I'm going to make mistakes. But if we make new mistakes, that's good. Right?
Of course, because you can learn from that.
Right, yeah.
So when you make the same ones again
over and over again, it's like,
then it's a problem.
Yeah, right.
No, I definitely agree. I always tell people, like, when they're like, oh, this is perfect, I'm like, no, we are not allowed to say perfect. Like, I don't like that word. There's no such thing as perfection. Like,
no.
Perfection is just you being as best as you can. Like, that's all it is.
Right.
But yeah, so being able to find the acceptance was really, like, I guess the key for you to finding the balance between, it's awesome.
Yeah.
It really is. So I guess my next question would be with the Suboxone, methadone treatments, how do you feel about those? Like, is that something that you would encourage people to do, is like go find treatment through like a Suboxone or a methadone? I only ask because when I went into rehab, there were people who were in there detoxing from methadone. And I've known so many people that go into methadone or Suboxone clinics that end up just becoming addicted to it. Or, you know, going through like a 3 to 6 month, depending on what they're able to get, time, and then they go right back to using. And most of the people that I see going into them, they don't come back out with like positive experiences.
Sure.
So I kind of want to get, I guess, your point of view.
Yeah, so I don't have like a ton of perspective on it, but I do know that when it comes to Suboxone and methadone, it can be really tricky. I think like the goal for, at least like the idea is like if you get on them, any of those programs, you're able to then find a support group, have that support group, have that system in place, whatever it might be, and then get off with your doctor.
Yeah.
So the support group still stays, but it's just tricky because like once you get on, it's really hard to get off.
It is.
And I don't have personal experience per se. I do know people that have been on that path, but you just support them in any way that you can if they want to get off.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I think that it might be a gentler way of getting off if that's the curve that we're trying to get at. But, you know, I mean, either way, like, you're going to have to get off of a substance.
Right.
And for me, like, the quicker and safest route is better, you know, because the faster it's out of your system, the easier we can get to a point of stability where your brain chemistry is, like, even keel with, you know, what you're trying to do. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, I actually really like that point of view, like being able to get there like efficiently. Because I always, when I went into recovery, I was like, I don't want any Suboxone. Like they gave it to me, and when I said I didn't want it, they were like, you're refusing treatment, and this, that, and the third. And I just felt like it was almost being forced on me. So I had like a very negative outlook on it, both from like people I had seen go through the programs and not succeed, and then with mine, like being like, you have to take this. I was like, no.
Right. Yeah, and you don't have to take anything.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like I mean, this is just my personal experience, but I was on psych meds for a very long time, and you know, I was diagnosed with depression and anxiety, and given like been through a lot of depressing stuff, so like of course I'm going to be diagnosed with depression. But you know, with my doctor, I had been on psych meds since I was like 11 or 12 years old, like very, very young age. Ever since my mother had passed, it was like, you need this.
Right.
And like, what am I going to say?
Especially at that age.
Right. Like, okay, like I guess I'm going to take this. And when I was 18, I was talking with my doctor, and I was like, look, man, like I don't know if this is just me, and like, you know, keep in mind, like I had the support system in place. I had a little bit of time clean, and I had like an exit route to where I was headed in case like anything went wrong, right? So it was like, I'm gonna be safe about this. But I was talking to my doctor, and I was like, look, like I don't think I'm depressed. You know, I might have anxiety, but like I don't think it's debilitating enough to be on medication. And I think I might want to try to like taper off and see what happens. And our agreement was like, if, you know, straight up honesty, see each other more often. Therapy was still in place, yoga was still in place, meetings were still in place. And it was like, if you feel any type of way, we're gonna go right back on.
Right.
And like I was like, all right, cool. And I haven't been on medication since. So, you know, like that's just my scenario, you know, I'm not like, get off your meds, you know, but like,
you had a plan.
Going back if I needed to.
Yeah.
And I still am. Like, if I find myself going in a place of long-term depression, and by long-term, I mean like a month, a couple weeks, if I start to get depressed, I know what that feels like. And it's like, all right, like, this is my system that I'm going to go to, and I'll be okay.
Yeah.
You know?
I think having a plan of action is definitely the way to go, because a lot of people, they're either one way or the other. They're like, drugs, I need the medication, I want to go that route, or they're the like anti-drug, I won't take any medication, I won't go speak to a therapist, I won't. So being able to have, like, you have a lot of options. You were doing the yoga, you had a therapist, you were trying the medication, so you had a lot of options. I think that's like really the key to it, is making sure
we need options.
Yeah, because one day you might need the yoga more, one day you might need therapy more, and it's all like what your body is feeling that day. I don't know why he's attacking the walls. But having those options, it's the same thing as like being able to have your support system. Sure. Whether it's like one day you talk to one person, one day you talk to another, whether it's one day you try one thing, one day you try another. I think that's probably one of the biggest things, and that brings it right back to being able to have that physical exercise as being something that you do. As well as having a support system. So right. That's I think that everything you just did is like amazing. And
well, and I was given like the opportunity to have options.
Yeah.
You know, and unfortunately, like a lot of people don't get options.
Right.
They get 30-day treatment. They can't afford yoga. Right. You know, they can't afford a therapist every week that's not under their insurance. You know, like I've been given these opportunities because unfortunately, like where I came from. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
I wish that I could say, like, oh, go do, like, I mean, I don't know if yoga is something that could be insured. You know what I mean? It's,
in some cases it can be, in some cases it can't. But I mean, it's the same thing with therapy.
right.
Like, when I was younger and I went to see my therapist, like the first therapist I ever went to go see, we had to look everywhere just to find someone in the area that was covered by an insurance plan.
Sure.
There like weren't
And even
any.
like a copay, you know, it's
Right.
it's difficult, and that's why, like, when it comes down to it, if like there aren't many options, like, hold the ones that you have very, very close.
Yeah.
Because we might not be able to have like many fallback plans,
Right.
and we might be in situations that are really tight where we don't have many options.
Right.
But you know, like there will always be a support group if you look for it. Always.
Absolutely.
No matter where you are, there are people doing the right thing.
Mhm.
You just have to find them.
Yeah.
Because that was my excuse. Like, nobody's getting clean at 17. It's like,
Right.
actually, like, I know people that have like decades clean that got clean at 17. I know people that have like a year or two that are 18 or 19 years old. You know what I mean? So
Right.
it's nice, and it's also nice to be able to be that person for a younger person that does enter recovery. It's like,
Yeah.
they say the same thing. Nobody's like me. I'm different. Nobody's gonna be able to relate to me because I'm young. And I'm like, hey, like, you know, I'll have 4 years in February. And I try to tell them, like, you know, I'm gonna be 21 on Christmas, and I'm gonna celebrate clean, you know?
Congrats.
Didn't stop me before, like, you know, like, the age wasn't an issue, but, like, you know, like, the thought is still there.
Yeah.
But if I communicate it with that person or those people, like, I'm gonna be okay, you know?
I found like a lot of groups actually that are trying to bring like the physical aspect and the physical exercise aspect of it to different communities. 2 of them were Pure Vita Recovery, and then Phoenix Multisport. They were the only ones I found, but I'm sure that there's so many others.
Right.
I have friends who do, they offer free yoga in Philadelphia.
Yes,
so
I know
it's
that
definitely
too.
growing and
Yeah.
getting there. Maybe like a few more years, it'll be a little bit bigger, and being able to bring that kind of thing to more people.
Sure.
Because yeah, it's definitely like having that option is huge, and being able to make sure that everyone has it is even bigger.
Yeah.
Because it is. It's something that you need to be able to have. You need to be able to have those options.
Mhm.
And I firmly believe it should be part of like most insurance plans.
Sure.
If
Well,
not all.
yeah, and I feel like the more options you have, the more avenues of success you can have. Because
Yeah.
if you just say, like, you need to do this one thing, it's like, no. What if I don't want to do that one thing?
Right.
You know, and sometimes you gotta bite the bullet and do it until something better shows up. But
Yeah.
like, most of the time it's, that option isn't the most ideal, and it's because maybe they would want to do yoga.
Right.
You know?
Like
maybe.
everyone's story is different, and you have
Right.
to find what's going to click with them and connect to them, talk to
Sure.
them, make them feel like they belong.
Sure.
Because that community sense, it's huge. They need to feel like they belong to whatever it is they're doing
Mhm.
in order to really let it work for yourself.
Right.
So.
Absolutely. Yeah, and you know, the Bridgeway School is still like an extended part of me. I mean, I've done many different events with them. They're super supportive. I still support them as a school. You know, just these past couple, what was it, like 2 weeks ago, I met with, you know, Governor Wolf and Michael Bloomberg, and we talked about recovery communities and like how a recovery high school can help a community and help the younger people get clean more efficiently.
Yeah.
Rather than like placing them back in, because there was that $50 million, you know, donation from
Right.
Michael Bloomberg for the opioid crisis, and $10 million of that, which is going towards Philadelphia alone. So, you know, I was telling him like, hey, like, this works.
Yeah.
I would not be alive if it weren't for this school, and like I wouldn't be able to probably feel as good without minding your mind, you know, like being able to like tell kids that it exists. It's like this exists.
Right.
And
Before you told me anything about it, I knew nothing of this.
And that's
like,
part of the
whole family was
problem.
on recovery, so
right, that's part of the problem. Nobody knows.
yeah.
So
No, definitely getting the word out there, just bringing awareness to it, letting people know that it's an option, because there's
Right.
so many kids that are in middle school and high school that are using drugs, and I'm not gonna tell people like not to use drugs, because
sure.
people are gonna do what they want to do.
Right.
But like knowing that there's options out there for if you find yourself trapped with drugs, or if you find yourself not feeling great,
Right.
you know, being able to just know that it's there.
Right. And, you know, I told myself for a long time, like, I'm in high school, I'm supposed to be doing drugs, you know?
Right.
But, like, I wasn't supposed to use drugs when I felt any type of feeling.
Right.
You know? Like, when I felt bad and I felt like I needed to use drugs, or I used drugs in ways that I never thought I would. You know, it's like there are very like specific classifications, I believe, for me, where it's like this makes me an addict. And I knew that I didn't use like the other kids did, and that scared me.
Yeah.
So
as an addict, you almost immediately start to see it, like when you're younger, that you're using drugs differently or that you're using them for different reasons, but it never really fully clicks until
well,
like
it's
much
not
later.
that bad,
Right.
you know. Like I just thought it was never that bad, and it was bad enough because I felt horrible.
Yeah.
You know, I thought because like I never used the needle that I wasn't an addict, but that's just not true.
Right.
But if I kept using, most likely, if not 100%, I would have been.
Yeah. Well, because you can't ever tell where it's going to end up, but you know that it is progressive and it will continue to grow, and it's just going to get worse.
Right.
And you don't always know that at first, but eventually it's going to get there.
Sure.
But hi. Minding Your Mind like works with the mental health aspect as well. So I know I've read like a million things on like how addiction is very associated with mental health, and I personally believe that it is a mental health disease. What is your experience in like noticing people who have mental health issues in addition to addiction, or use addiction to cover up mental health issues?
Yeah, so I mean, it can be kind of tricky. It's like the chicken or the egg, you know, with what happened.
Right.
I know for me that, and I see it in a lot of kids, you know, like they go through a lot of traumatic stuff, especially like when I go to schools in Philadelphia. It's like they just don't have many options. They go through a lot of stuff at home, and using becomes a good idea because they can't quite cope with what's going on. You know, there's no class for how to positively cope with your feelings. You know, it's like get through school.
They should have that class.
They should. They should.
They totally should.
But I mean, I feel like it's just a personal thing. You know, like, do you think that you're using, let's say somebody has bipolar, you know, are they using to make their bipolar like less aggressive, or to like kind of mute it down a little bit, or are they using which gives them symptoms of bipolar because of the rapid ups and downs? Like, what is it? And I think if you take the drugs out of the equation, the drugs and alcohol out of the equation, if bipolar symptoms are still there, like you might be bipolar, I don't know, like talk to your doctor, you know, you're not a doctor. But, you know, I know for me personally, like, and I can only speak on my own personal experiences, like when I took the drugs away, I still had like many addictive tendencies. And because of those addictive tendencies, I knew that I was an addict. Before I picked up a drug, I was an addict, you know, like with food, for sure. I did things to many different extremes. Looking back, I can identify now that like, wow, like I believe I was born this way, and like that's okay, you know, like I'm obviously at peace with it. But for somebody else, that might not be the case. They might be trying to deal with mental health issues and not be properly medicated, right? Or might not be able to deal with the depression or the anxiety, and it's undiagnosed, and drugs and alcohol come into play to like make themselves feel better, or they might have both. So, you know,
and there's for a lot of people, it's like it's just undiagnosed, and it becomes undiagnosed because of the stigma we have towards mental health, and the idea that like I don't want to go see a therapist, I don't need a therapist, my brain's fine, blah blah blah. Like there's so many different excuses that we tell ourselves, and so many stigmas. I was watching Jeffrey Lieberman, and he was talking about how, like, if you would call out of work, like, would you rather say that you're profusely vomiting and diarrheaing, or, like, I'm just having a bad day?
Right.
Or, like, would you want to say, like, I'm having suicidal thoughts, or I have to go to the doctor because I have the flu?
Right.
And, like, if you choose the physical illness and rather saying that, because I think diarrhea is completely embarrassing, I wouldn't want to tell anyone about it.
Right.
But if you're willing to say that over, like, I'm just having a bad day, or, like, I need a mental health day, then you're falling into that stigma regardless.
Sure.
And we all have it. Like, everywhere I go, it's like, if I tell people that I go see a therapist, unless they're in therapy themselves,
Right, like,
okay. They're like,
Yeah. Right.
And I grew up in a household that was like that. My parents were very much like, no, you don't need one. The only reason I ended up going to see a therapist as a kid is because the school was like, you guys need to take her. Like, she needs this help, and like, it's not happening. It's not coming from home. Like, it needs to happen somewhere. And I feel like that happens with a lot of people. Like, we just have this stigma that like our brain must be fine, and we ignore it until it manifests itself in a physical thing. And just being able to break that stigma. What's one of the things that like Mind Your Mind would do to kind of help break those stigmas? I know you say they work with.
Sure. I mean, like, you know, I tell everything up there, up on the stage, and you know, kids look at me immediately and they're like, no, like, there's no way, you know, especially if I go into a community where I'm very different. You know, it's like an all boys school, you know, it's like they look at me and they're like, nah, dude, like, she's not an addict. Like, there's no, like, it's just, there are many, many different ways that, like, I do not fit into that box.
Right.
You know, like, I'm basically, like, a walking, like, that's not her, you know, like, that's not who that is. Like, I'm smart, you know, I'm athletic, I'm outgoing, I love people, like, and, like, it's like there are so many different classifications on why you would put me out of any of the categories that you could. And like, I stand there and I tell you exactly how it was and how it went and how I got better and how I'm continuing to get better in the recovery process, because you're never recovered. Like, it's not like I'm done. Like, because once you feel like you're done, you're definitely not.
So you need to start all over again.
Right. But you know, like with breaking the stigma, like I share all those things, and then kids are like, wow, I might be that person too.
So kind of like leading by example.
Like, they might think that it's like, if she went through all of these things, how am I any different? Because they might be counting themselves out too, saying like, oh, both of my parents are doctors, and you know, but it doesn't matter.
Right.
You know, because this is just the way that I look. The way that I am on the inside is completely different.
Right.
So I guess the way that Mind Your Mind works is kind of like just talking about all of those things and saying like, it's never too late or too early to get help. Be aware of what you're thinking and how you're feeling. And if something about that scares you, like how you're thinking or how you're feeling, like try to tell a trusted adult. And you know, we do talk to kids the majority of the time, so a trusted adult could be a parent, it could be a teacher, it could be a therapist, it could be a coach, and trying to gather a support system that matters to you and that you can utilize.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Finding that support system can be hard at first, but once you have it, it is a powerful thing, because I remember, so in high school is when kind of like a lot of my mental illness was like really there. I had really bad depression, I was suicidal, like terrible. And I didn't have a support system at all. I had kind of like learned from my family that like, you don't talk about what's going on in your brain, you don't have a therapist, you don't have any of that. And I had written a note to a friend, kind of it was like my suicide note, but it was like like I handed it to her in school and was like planning to go home that night. And she went and told a counselor, and I was livid with her.
Of course.
I was so pissed, and I like hated her for years after that. And it took me a while to like really understand that, like, number one, I put so much on her giving her that.
Right.
Like, that was a weight, and like, I shouldn't have done that to her. First of all, like, she was my best friend, and I put so much on her.
Right.
So that was the first thing, and then number two was that she was working for me. You know, she was doing what she could to help me. And with me and the way that I am, and like self-doubting pretty much like every move I make, I was like, I did something wrong. Like, I pushed her away. I made her believe that she couldn't trust in me, and like all this stuff. But once I realized that she had been helping me, and granted this was years later and we had completely lost touch. I found her through Facebook and like profusely was apologizing. I was like, I'm so sorry that this happened and that I did that to you. But once I realized that she had done that for me and that she was my support system without me even knowing it, I was able to better kind of find support systems for myself.
Sure.
And for me, it's been everything. It's just having someone that I can talk to. Therapists, amazing, but I like to have like personal connections with the people that I consider my support system. So for me, when I tell people, I'm like 100% like find a support system, find someone that you can entrust with like the good, the bad, the everything. Like, whether it's your therapist, whether it's not, but if you can make friendships out of it, I think that just having that support system, having someone to talk to and express your feelings to, because it's hard. It's so hard to be able to say what is on your mind.
Yeah.
So yeah, for me, I think that the support system is like the biggest key. And like I said, I found a lot with like the physical activity. I think that that's a really good one.
Yeah.
Helps tire the body out a little bit too.
Right. Well, and you were saying like, you know, the whole like, you told a friend that you wanted to hurt yourself. It's like, it is way better to lose a friendship than a friend.
Yeah.
Because she could have said nothing.
Right.
Right? And then what would have happened? It's like, who knows?
Right.
But, you know, I always tell people, it's like, you might be scared to tell a therapist or tell somebody if somebody shares troubling information with you, but I promise you, like, that person will move on.
Right.
From it. Like you said, like, you apologize, you're like, say sorry, but, like, the reality is, like, we are not meant to, like, be a therapist to that person.
Right.
But we are meant to share it with a trusted adult, a person of authority, such as that.
Yeah.
And then, like, you did your part. Like, your side of the street is clean, and you're fine. And the person might be pissed. They might be happy. Who knows how they might feel. But you pass the message along to further help that friend.
Yeah.
And that's huge.
And I'm glad that she did. Like, now looking back,
Right.
I'm so glad that she did. Because most people, they would have just kind of gotten rid of it.
Yeah, it would have been like, oh, this is uncomfortable. But
Right.
she did the uncomfortable thing.
Yeah.
And it's uncomfortable that might be, like, she might have saved your life.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Right?
Seriously, though, because it's, and that's kind of what I wanted to get at, is, like, when you see someone, like, not doing well, and, like, if someone had a broken leg, you would rush over and try to help them. Like, if you see someone in, like, mental anguish or mental pain or every day just struggling with life,
Sure.
just go to them and talk to them, because there's so much that you can do just by
Right.
saying hello, how are you, you know, just start a conversation.
Yeah, and that's like with the cutting, you know, that's exactly what it was. Like, I needed to manifest it into something physical because I just took a little bit of that inside pain and I put it on the outside.
Yeah.
And somebody would ask, what's going on?
Yeah.
And you know, as much as at the time I didn't want to say it was for like any like attention, like, it's not like that, but like, I didn't know how to tell you.
Right.
It's like, this was the only way that I could tell you how I felt.
Yeah.
And it was like, I'm in this much pain. This is really what's going on. And I can't tell you because if I tell you, you might judge me. And like, it was this whole thing.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, like, I just wanted somebody to ask me. And I wanted to be able to answer honestly.
Yeah.
And you know, that looked like, for me, it was writing. You know, taking that inside pain and putting it on the outside. But instead of putting it on my wrist, I put it on a piece of paper.
Yeah.
And it was healthy.
Yeah.
And instead of somebody saying, like, what is wrong with you? Why would you do this? It was like, wow, like, this is really how you feel? I was like, yes.
Yeah.
This is exactly how I feel. And I wasn't injuring myself, and it was a positive way to, like, let go of my feelings.
Yeah. For a lot of people, writing or painting, any kind of art, dance, movement,
Sure.
it's extremely powerful because it does. It brings the inside to the outside. And that's the thing, is that most people who struggle with some kind of mental disease, they will manifest their feelings in some kind of physical way. They will give you like subtle hints that they need someone to speak to. And it's kind of up to everyone else to decipher it. And I don't want to put like the pressure on any one particular person.
No, but they don't
Just
need
be
to
aware.
carry that person. They just
Right.
need to pass the message along if they can.
Yeah.
Right? If they pick it up.
Yeah.
Because it is a professional's. Like, that's
Oh,
why
yeah.
they got in the job.
Oh
To
yeah.
help you, right? I am not a professional. I don't have a degree, like, I'm not a doctor, right? I just have, like, personal experiences.
Yeah.
So yeah.
No, awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming and talking to me.
Yeah,
I'm so
sure.
glad that I was able to do this with you.
Yeah, me too.
So I always give everyone, 30 seconds to a minute if you want to tell people, what's going on, if you want people to be aware of anything. This is your time to plug whatever you've got.
Sure, yeah. So, I mean, I guess, like, my only thing would be, like, if you find yourself struggling with anything, any type of pain, just know that, like, pain is perspective. And I always minimized my pain, and I said, oh, it's not that bad, it's not that bad. Or, it's too much, nobody's going to want to hear it. The way that I see it is, like, if any of you are struggling with, like, a cat dying or getting a C on a test or not doing as well as you think you should have, like, that pain is just as important and valid as the pain that I shared. And your voice is just as important as mine is. I mean, the way that I see it, like just because I talk on stages or just because I share my story to many, many people, it doesn't mean that I'm better than, and it doesn't mean that you're less than. So being able to share openly and honestly with somebody that you trust and opening up that support network is huge. I mean, the Bridgeway School exists, Minding Your Mind exists, people like me and we exist, and you just have to look for it. And the more open you are, the more opportunity and possibilities there are for recovery. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.